A little snow began to drift down from the sky. It was November 12th, 1970, and 160 miles northeast of this middle-sized western Maine town, John Smith's dark sleep went on and on. The killer scanned the park, the town common the tourists who came to Castle Rock in the Lakes region liked to call it. But there were no tourists now. The common that was so green in the summer was now yellow, balding, and dead. It waited for winter to cover it decently. The wire mesh backdrop behind the Little League home plate stood in rusty, overlapping diamonds, framed against the white sky. The bandstand needed a fresh coat of paint. It was a depressing scene, but the killer was not depressed. He was almost manic with joy. His toes wanted to tap, his fingers wanted to snap. There would be no shying away this time. He crushed his smoke under one boot heel and lit another immediately. He glanced at his watch. 3:02 p.m. He sat and smoked. 2 boys passed through the park, tossing a football back and forth, but they didn't see the killer because the benches were down in a dip. He supposed it was a place where the nasty fuckers came at night when the weather was warmer. He knew all about the nasty fuckers and the things they did. His mother had told him, and he had seen them. Thinking about his mother made his smile fade a little. He remembered a time when he had been 7. She had come into his room without knocking. She never knocked, and had caught him playing with his thing. She had just about gone crazy. He had tried to tell her it was nothing bad. It had just stood up. He hadn't done anything to make it stand up. It did it all on its own. And he just sat there boinging it back and forth. It wasn't even that much fun. It was sort of boring, but his mother had just about gone crazy. "Do you want to be one of those nasty fuckers?" she had screamed at him. He didn't even know what that word meant. Not nasty, he knew that one, but the other one. Although he had heard some of the bigger kids use it in the play yard at the Castle Rock Elementary School. "Do you want to be one of those nasty fuckers and get one of those diseases? Do you want to have pus running out of it? Do you want it to turn black? Do you want it to rot off? Huh? She began to shake him back and forth then, and he began to blubber with fear. Even then she was a big woman, a dominant and overbearing ocean liner of a woman, and he was not the killer then. He was not slick then. He was a little boy blubbering with fear, and his thing had collapsed and was trying to shrivel back into his body. She had made him wear a clothespin on it for 2 hours, so he would know how those diseases felt. The pain was excruciating. The little snow flurry had passed. He brushed the image of his mother out of his mind, something he could do effortlessly when he was feeling good, something he couldn't do at all when he was feeling depressed and low. His thing was standing up now. He glanced at his watch. 3:07. He dropped his cigarette half-smoked. Someone was coming. He recognized her. It was Alma Frechette from the coffee pot across the street, just coming off shift. He knew Alma. He had dated her up once or twice, shown her a good time. Took her to Serenity Hill over in Naples. She was a good dancer. Nasty fuckers often were. He was glad it was Alma coming. She was by herself. Back in the U.S., back in the U.S., back in the USSR. "Alma!" he called and waved. She started a little, looked around, and saw him. She smiled and walked over to the bench where he sat, saying hello and calling him by name. He stood up, smiling. He wasn't worried about anyone coming. He was untouchable. He was Superman. "Why are you wearing that?" she asked, looking at him. "Slick, isn't it?" he said, smiling. "Well, I wouldn't exactly—" "You want to see something?" he asked. "On the bandstand. It's the goddamnedest thing." "What is it?" "Come and look." "All right." As simple as that. She went with him to the bandstand. If anyone had been coming, he still could have called it off. But no one came. No one passed. They had the common to themselves. The white sky brooded over them. Alma was a small girl with light blonde hair. Dyed blonde hair, he was quite sure. Sluts dyed their hair. He led her up onto the enclosed bandstand. Their feet made hollow, dead echoes on the boards. An overturned music stand lay in one corner. There was an empty Four Roses bottle. This was a place where the nasty fuckers came, all right. "What?" she asked, sounding a little puzzled now, a little nervous. The killer smiled joyously and pointed to the left of the music stand. "There, see?" She followed his finger. A used condom lay on the boards like a shriveled snakeskin. Alma's face went tight, and she turned to go so quickly that she almost got by the killer. "That's not very funny." He grabbed her and threw her back. "Where do you think you're going?" Her eyes were suddenly watchful and frightened. "Let me out of here, or you'll be sorry. I don't have any time for sick jokes." "It's no joke," he said. "It's no joke, you nasty fucker." He was light-headed with the joy of naming her for what she was. The world whirled. Alma broke left, heading for the low railing that surrounded the bandstand, meaning to leap over it. The killer caught the back of her cheap cloth coat at the collar and yanked her back again. The cloth ripped with a low purring sound, and she opened her mouth to scream. He slammed his hand over her mouth, mashing her lips back against her teeth. He felt warm blood trickle over his palm. Her other hand was beating at him now, clawing for purchase, but there was no purchase. There was none because he was slick. He threw her to the board floor. His hand came off her mouth, which was now smeared with blood, and she opened her mouth to scream again, but he landed on top of her, panting, grinning, and the air was driven out of her lungs in a soundless whoosh. She could feel him now, rock hard, gigantic and throbbing, and she quit trying to scream and went on struggling. Her fingers caught and slipped. He forced her legs rudely apart and lay between them. One of her hands glanced off the bridge of his nose, making his eyes water. "You nasty fucker," he whispered, and his hands closed on her throat. He began to throttle her, yanking her head up from the bandstand's board flooring and then slamming it back down. Her eyes bulged. Her face went pink, then red, then a congested purple. Her struggles began to weaken. "Nasty fucker, nasty fucker, nasty fucker," the killer panted hoarsely. He really was the killer now. Alma Frechette's days of rubbing her body all over people at Serenity Hill were done now. Her eyes bugged out like the eyes of some of those crazy dolls they sold along Carnival midways. The killer panted hoarsely. Her hands lay limp on the boards now. His fingers had almost disappeared from sight. He let go of her throat, ready to grab her again if she stirred. But she didn't. After a moment, he ripped her coat open with shaking hands and shoved the skirt of her pink waitress uniform up. The white sky looked down. The Castle Rock town common was deserted. In fact, no one found the strangled, violated corpse of Alma Frechette until the next day. The sheriff's theory was that a drifter had done it. There were statewide newspaper headlines, and in Castle Rock there was general agreement with the sheriff's idea. Surely no hometown boy could have done such a dreadful thing. Chapter 5. Herb and Vera Smith went back to Pownell and took up the embroidery of their days. Herb finished a house in Durham that December. Their savings did indeed melt away, as Sarah had foreseen, and they applied to the state for extraordinary disaster assistance. That aged Herb almost as much as the accident itself had done. EDA was only a fancy way of saying welfare, or charity in his mind. He had spent a lifetime working hard and honestly with his hands, and had thought he would never see the day when he would have to take a state dollar. But here that day was. Vera subscribed to 3 new magazines which came through the mail at irregular intervals. All 3 were badly printed and might have been illustrated by talented children. God's Saucers, The Coming Transfiguration, and God's Psychic Miracles. The upper room, which still came monthly, now sometimes lay unopened for as long as 3 weeks at a stretch, but she read these others to tatters. She found a great many things in them that seemed to bear upon Johnny's accident, and she read these nuggets to her tired husband at supper in a high, piercing voice that trembled with exultation. Herb found himself telling her more and more frequently to be quiet, and on occasion shouting at her to shut up that drivel and let him alone. When he did that, she would give him long-suffering, compassionate, and hurt glances, then slink upstairs to continue her studies. She began to correspond with these magazines, and to exchange letters with the contributors and with other pen friends who had had similar experiences in their lives. Most of her correspondents were good-hearted people like Vera herself, people who wanted to help and to ease the nearly insupportable burden of her pain. They sent prayers and prayer stones. They sent charms. They sent promises to include Johnny in their nightly devotions. Yet there were others who were nothing but con men and women, and Herb was alarmed by his wife's increasing inability to recognize these. There was an offer to send her a sliver of the one true cross of our Lord for just $99.98, an offer to send a vial of water drawn from the spring at Lourdes, which would almost certainly work a miracle when rubbed into Johnny's forehead. That one was $110 plus postage. Cheaper, and more attractive to Vera, was a continuously playing cassette tape of the 23rd Psalm and the Lord's Prayer as spoken by Southern evangelist Billy Humbar. Played at Johnny's bedside over a period of weeks, it would almost certainly effect a marvelous recovery, according to the pamphlet. As an added blessing, for a short time only, an autographed picture of Billy Humbar himself would be included. Herb was forced to step in more and more frequently as her passion for these pseudo-religious gewgaws grew. Sometimes he surreptitiously tore up her checks and simply readjusted the checkbook balance upward. But when the offer specified cash and nothing but, he simply had to put his foot down. And Vera began to draw away from him, to view him with distrust as a sinner and an unbeliever. Sarah Bracknell kept school during her days. Her afternoons and evenings were not much different than they had been following the breakup with Dan. She was in a kind of limbo, waiting for something to happen. In Paris, the peace talks were stalled. Nixon had ordered the bombing of Hanoi continued, in spite of rising domestic and foreign protests. At a press conference, he produced pictures proving conclusively that American planes were surely not bombing North Vietnamese hospitals, but he went everywhere by Army helicopter. The investigation into the brutal rape murder of a Castle Rock waitress was stalled following the release of a wandering sign painter who had once spent 3 years in the Augusta State Mental Hospital. Against everyone's expectations, the sign painter's alibi had turned out to hold water. Janis Joplin was screaming the blues. Paris decreed for the 2nd year in a row that hemlines would go down, but they didn't. Sarah was aware of all these things in a vague way, like voices from another room where some incomprehensible party went on and on. The first snow fell, just a dusting, then a second dusting, and 10 days before Christmas there was a storm that closed area schools for the day, and she sat home, looking out at the snow as it filled Flag Street. Her brief thing with Johnny, she could not even properly call it an affair, was part of another season now, and she could feel him beginning to slip away from her. It was a panicky feeling, as if a part of her was drowning in days. She read a good deal about head injuries, comas, and brain damage. None of it was very encouraging. She found out there was a girl in a small Maryland town who had been in a coma for 6 years. There had been a young man from Liverpool, England, who had been struck by a grappling hook while working on the docks and had remained in a coma for 14 years before expiring. Little by little, this brawny young dock walloper had severed his connections with the world, wasting away, losing his hair, optic nerves degenerating into oatmeal behind his closed eyes, body gradually drawing up into a fetal position as his ligaments shortened. He had reversed time, had become a fetus again, swimming in the placental waters of coma as his brain degenerated. An autopsy following his death had shown that the folds and convolutions of his cerebrum had smoothed out, leaving the frontal and prefrontal lobes almost utterly smooth and blank. "Oh, Johnny, it just isn't fair," she thought, watching the snow fall outside, filling the world up with blank whiteness, burying fallen summer and a red-gold autumn. "It isn't fair. They should let you go to whatever there is to go to." There was a letter from Herb Smith every 10 days to 2 weeks. Vera had her pen friends, and he had his. He wrote in a large, sprawling hand, using an old-fashioned fountain pen. "We are both fine and well, waiting to see what will happen next, as you must be. Yes, I have been doing some reading, and I know what you are too kind and thoughtful to say in your letter, Sarah. It looks bad, but of course we hope. I don't believe in God the way Vera does, but I do believe in him after my fashion, and wonder why he didn't take John outright if he was going to. Is there a reason? No one knows, I guess. We only hope." In another letter, "I'm having to do most of the Xmas shopping this year, as Vera has decided Xmas presents are a sinful custom. This is what I mean about her getting worse all the time. She always thought it was a holy day instead of a holiday, if you see what I mean, and if she saw me calling it Xmas instead of Christmas, I guess she'd shoot me for a hoss thief. She was always saying how we should remember it is the birthday of Jesus Christ and not Santa Claus, but she never minded the shopping before. In fact, she used to like it. Now, ragging against it is all she talks about, seems like. She gets a lot of these funny ideas from the people she writes back and forth to. Golly, I do wish she'd stop and get back to normal. But otherwise we are both fine and well. Herb." And a Christmas card that she had wept over a little. "Best to you from both of us this holiday season, and if you'd like to come down and spend Xmas with a couple of old fogies, the spare bedroom is made up. Vera and I are both fine and well. Hope the new year is better for all of us, and I'm sure it will be. Herb and Vera." She didn't go down to Pownell over the Christmas vacation, partly because of Vera's continued withdrawal into her own world. Her progress into that world could be read pretty accurately between the lines of Herb's letters, and partly because their mutual tie now seemed so strange and distant to her. The still figure in the Bangor hospital bed had once been seen in close-up, but now she always seemed to be looking at him through the wrong end of memory's telescope. Like the balloon man, he was far and wee, so it seemed best to keep her distance. Perhaps Herb sensed it as well. His letters became less frequent as 1970 became 1971.